You know, usually when we try to learn a new physical skill, we just implicitly understand that we have to actually do it to learn it.
Right. Yeah. You can't just read about it.
Exactly. Like think about riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
If you, for whatever reason, wanted to learn to ride a bike, you wouldn't just sit down with this heavy textbook on physics,
Oh,
right?
definitely not.
You wouldn't like study the mechanics of gears or memorize gravitational pull and then expect to just, hop on the saddle and ride perfectly down the street.
No, you'd crash right into a mailbox on your first pedal.
Right.
Because a physical act, it requires actual physical trial and error, not
Right.
just, conceptual understanding.
Yeah, and you kind of expect to wobble or maybe even scrape a knee a few times. But when it comes to learning a language, and specifically for you listening right now, if you're trying to learn English, we almost always default to that textbook approach.
It's so true. We just cram.
We cram grammar rules into our heads, and then we wonder why, when it's time to actually open our mouths and speak to a real human being, our minds just go completely blank.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of a cognitive freeze. I mean, we load our working memory with so much theoretical data that the real world application of it just becomes terrifying.
Well, welcome to this deep dive, because today our mission is to tackle that exact universal challenge. We're talking about the anxiety, the blank mind, and just the sheer frustration that comes with trying to speak a new language.
And it's such a common frustration, too.
It really is. And we are pulling our insights today from this really fantastic, super practical transcript from a YouTube video by Jack over at Simple Spoken English.
Yeah, and the overarching theme from his material, it isn't about memorizing massive grammar rule books or agonizing over these, complex vocabulary lists.
Thank goodness.
Right. Instead, we're going to extract a really highly specific, customized 10-minute daily practice routine.
Okay, 10 minutes. I like that.
Yeah, it's entirely designed to bypass that fear, stop the habit of native language translation, and actually build authentic confidence through really small, consistent wins.
So before we can even get to building that daily language routine, I feel like we first have to understand the psychology of that blank mind we mentioned.
Definitely. The source points out something really interesting here. The core problem isn't that English is inherently, too hard to speak.
Right.
It's that learners are trying to master grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and fluency all at the exact same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just a massive systemic overload. Think about it like a computer.
Okay.
If you launch 4 or 5 high-power video editing applications all at once on an old laptop,
Yeah.
the system just crashes.
Right. The fan starts spinning, everything freezes.
Exactly. So when you try to perfectly align a past tense grammar rule, recall a difficult vocabulary word, and nail the pronunciation of a tricky vowel sound simultaneously, you just overwhelm your brain's processing capacity.
It literally shuts down your ability to speak.
It does. But, beyond just the cognitive load, there is a deeper psychological insight here, which is that your brain fears what it avoids.
Ooh, I want to dig into that fear aspect because I think a lot of people, they assume that confidence is just something you either have or you don't.
Yeah, like it's a personality trait.
Exactly. Or they think, they have to wait to feel confident before they actually try to speak.
And that right there is the ultimate trap.
Really?
Yeah, because every single time you avoid speaking because you're afraid of making a mistake, you are literally sending a neurological signal to your brain that speaking English is a dangerous threat.
Oh, wow. So avoiding it makes it scarier.
Exactly. The fear actually ferments and grows in the silence. But the moment you take a small action, even just speaking one horribly constructed sentence out loud, you send a completely new signal.
You're telling yourself you survived.
Yes. You tell your brain's amygdala, oh, hey, this is safe. We survived the interaction. The action absolutely must come first. The confidence only follows the survival of that action.
Wait, let me push back on that just a little bit. On behalf of basically everyone who grew up in a traditional school system.
Sure, go for it.
Because we are taught that knowledge is power, right? Shouldn't we fully understand the rules before we try to execute them? I want to know the rules of the road before I drive a car, otherwise I'm a danger to myself and everyone else.
It's a fair instinct, it really is. But speaking a language isn't just data retrieval. It is a motor skill.
A motor skill.
Yeah, the source uses that bicycle analogy you hinted at earlier. I mean, you can watch 100 YouTube videos on how to balance on a bike enter.
Yeah, but you don't actually learn until your body feels the shift in gravity.
Precisely. Speaking is physical. Your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords, they literally have to learn the muscle memory of the words. You are training muscles, not just a prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so if our brain is crashing because we're running too many background applications, the first thing we need to do is close the biggest, most draining app of all.
Yes, we have to completely eliminate the translation lag.
The translation habit. The source says this is arguably the single biggest barrier to fluency.
It really is. Fluent speakers, they do not think in their native language, say Hindi or Spanish or French, and then translate it into English in their heads.
Right, because that multi-step process just makes you incredibly slow.
Very slow. And it causes confusion when sentence structures don't line up perfectly, you know?
Uh-huh.
It inevitably leaves you just stuck right in the middle of a thought.
But we only do it because the brain follows its dominant habit,
On
right?
that bike. If you've spent your entire life thinking in your native language, that is a deeply grooved automatic neurological pathway.
So to speak fluidly, you basically have to build a brand new dominant habit of thinking directly in English.
That's the goal.
But I read that and immediately thought, like, how do you actually force yourself to have an internal monologue in a language you barely even know?
It sounds impossible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if my vocabulary is only 50 words, my thoughts are going to sound like a toddler. That sounds incredibly frustrating.
And that frustration is exactly why people quit. But the genius of this approach from Jack is that you were supposed to keep it incredibly, almost ridiculously small.
Like, how small?
Well, you don't try to debate philosophy in your head. You start by simply labeling your immediate physical reality.
Okay.
You literally look around the room you are sitting in right now and you describe things. You think to yourself, I am sitting, this is my phone, the coffee is hot.
Oh, so it's just tagging the world around you with, like, simple English Post-it notes in your mind.
Exactly. Because fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about thinking directly, using whatever tiny vocabulary you already possess.
Right.
The source actually shares this really powerful story about a learner named Noah.
Oh, yeah, Noah's story stood out to me.
Right. He was just completely exhausted from translating every single word in his head. Having a conversation felt like a heavy, draining chore.
I think anyone who has ever traveled to a foreign country and tried to get by knows that exact kind of mental exhaustion. Like, you need a nap after ordering a sandwich.
Yes. So Noah decided to enforce this strict personal rule. Absolutely no more translation, only direct, simple thinking.
In the source notes, it was incredibly difficult for the first couple of days.
Oh, I'm sure. It feels completely unnatural to suppress your native inner voice. But he forced himself to just think, I am walking. I am tired. And he didn't stop.
And what happened?
Well, within a week, his processing speed increased. And within a month, his fluency absolutely skyrocketed because he was no longer running that background translation app. He was just expressing thoughts.
That's amazing. Knowing that we need to think directly in English is great, but getting there obviously requires practice.
Right.
And doing that practice in front of people who are, staring at you, waiting for you to finish your sentence, that's terrifying.
It's a lot of pressure.
So the source offers a way around this by transforming what is usually passive studying into an active, solitary routine. And the very first step of that is writing.
Writing is brilliant because speaking learners almost entirely ignore it.
Yeah, they think they need to speak to improve speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But writing is your personal, pressure-free practice zone. When you write, you intentionally slow down your thinking process.
You get to actually look at the architecture of your thoughts, but without a ticking clock.
Right. And there's this great example of a learner named Grace. She was just paralyzed by the fear of making grammatical errors when she spoke, so she avoided practicing altogether.
Her solution was so simple, though. She started writing just 3 very basic sentences a day.
Just 3. Things like, I wake up at 7, I eat breakfast, I go to work.
And by physically writing this daily, she built this combined visual, motor, and linguistic memory. Eventually, seeing the structure perfectly on the page, it just clarified her spoken words.
But, isolating your thoughts in writing only solves half the problem.
Right, because writing gives you the visual structure, but language is ultimately auditory.
Exactly. To bridge the gap between writing silently and speaking fluently, you have to introduce what the source calls the silent teacher, which is reading out loud.
See, I get reading to build vocabulary, but why read out loud? I mean, if
Mm,
your brain is already tired, it just feels like you're adding extra physical work for no reason.
Well, it is extra physical work, but that is precisely the point.
Okay, how so?
When you read silently, only your visual cortex is truly engaged. But when you read out loud, you are forcing your visual processing, your brain's language center, your vocal motor cortex, and your auditory processing to all fire off at the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you are physically building a new neurological reflex,
Hmm.
exactly like a musician practicing a scale on a piano.
And the material matters here too. We aren't talking about reading massive, complex novels that just make you feel inadequate.
No, not at all. The source recommends reading very short stories, just 5 or 6 lines long.
Like the story of Lily.
Yes, Lily's story perfectly illustrates this. She absolutely hated reading. It bored her, and complex English text just made her feel stupid.
But she forced herself to sit down and read simple, five-line stories out loud for just 10 minutes a day.
Right, and she didn't study the grammar in the stories. She just vocalized them. And within a short time, her speaking improved automatically.
It makes complete sense. I mean, reading out loud is basically like downloading a ready-made software update for your brain's sentence structure.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You don't have to code the software from scratch. You don't have to worry about where the noun or the verb goes. You just download the pattern the author already built and run it right through your vocal cords.
That software update analogy applies perfectly to the third solitary habit the source recommends, which is shadowing.
Shadowing. We all watch videos to learn, but passive video watching is largely just entertainment disguised as productivity, isn't it?
Mostly, yeah. Active learning requires actually engaging with the material.
So for you listening, I always hear about shadowing, but let's define it clearly. It's essentially just listen, pause, repeat.
Exactly. You find simple, slow English audio. You listen to one single line, you hit pause, and you repeat it out loud. And you try to perfectly mimic the tone, the rhythm, and the style of that native speaker.
The source talks about Mia, who used to just endlessly scroll through English YouTube videos, kind of hoping the language would just absorb into her brain by osmosis.
Spoiler alert, it didn't.
Right. But when she stopped random scrolling and actually committed to shadowing, her pronunciation and clarity transformed within weeks.
And then there's Leo. He studied textbook grammar and vocabulary for years, but he still couldn't understand native speakers.
Because his problem was that he had never trained his ears.
Exactly. So he started listening daily for just 10 minutes to simple audio. He treated his auditory processing like a muscle that just needed to be worked out.
And suddenly, he started recognizing the natural cadence and spoken patterns.
Because listening isn't passive if you're actively mapping the sounds to meaning. Think about how a child learns.
Oh, yeah. They spend months just listening and mapping sounds long before they ever attempt to speak a full sentence.
Right, you are intentionally recreating that natural biological learning environment for your own adult brain.
Okay, so we have these three fantastic active techniques. We've got writing simple sentences to see the structure, reading short stories out loud to build the physical reflex, and shadowing audio to map the pronunciation.
It's a great toolkit.
But for you listening, you probably have a job, you might have kids, your mornings are chaotic. How do we actually structure this into a sustainable morning ritual that guarantees progress without just adding to your daily stress?
Well, the source provides a very clear golden rule for this, and honestly, it's a relief.
Let's hear it.
10 minutes a day is vastly more powerful than 2 hours of intense study on a Sunday afternoon.
Just 10 minutes.
The consistency is the ultimate secret weapon. It will beat natural talent and it will beat sheer intelligence every single time.
Because consistency builds the neural pathways, whereas intensity just causes burnout.
Exactly. Look at Ryan's story from the source. He was trapped in that classic yo-yo studying cycle.
Right, where he would do 2 hours of intense, exhausting study one day, feel really great about himself, and then do absolutely nothing for the next 3 days.
And he made zero actual progress. But when he finally shifted to a strict, non-negotiable 10-minute daily habit, he built real, lasting confidence.
So let's give the listener the actual actionable blueprint for this 10-minute routine. It's wonderfully specific.
Yes, let's break it down.
First, you speak 5 simple sentences out loud. Things like, I am learning English. I feel good. I am trying today. And you don't just whisper them under your breath once.
No whispering.
You repeat them 5 to 10 times loudly.
The source heavily emphasizes using your full voice. Go out to the terrace, step into an empty room, or do it in your car on the commute. Your brain learns through the repetition, but your mouth only develops that crucial muscle memory through the physical volume and act of speaking.
Then we move to vocabulary, and this is where I think people will breathe a huge sigh of relief.
Oh, definitely.
You do not need to learn massive, complicated SAT words. The routine asks you to learn just 10 simple, highly useful verbs daily.
Words like eat, go, come, feel, make, see.
People often discard simple words because they feel, too elementary.
But they are the foundational building blocks of all fluent communication. Think about the mathematical power of just those few words you listed.
Let's actually workshop that right now. If I only have the words go, make, feel, and see, I can say, I want to go. I make food. I feel tired. I see the car. That's literally just 4 verbs, and I'm already communicating fundamental human needs and observations.
It's incredible. When you learn 10 of those high-utility verbs, you suddenly have the architectural capacity to create 100 different practical sentences.
So true.
The trap so many learners fall into is thinking that utilizing big, complex words is what makes them sound fluent.
Emma's story from the source is the perfect cautionary tale for this. She was downloading all these advanced vocabulary apps, trying to memorize words like extraordinary, magnificent, and complicated.
And what happened?
After weeks, she hadn't used a single one in real life. She forgot all of them, and she just felt totally demoralized.
She only started succeeding when she dropped the apps and switched to learning and applying 10 simple words a day. Fluency isn't about using complex vocabulary. It's about reducing the friction between your thought and your expression.
The beauty of the specific 10-minute routine, the 5 simple sentences repeated loudly, 10 basic functional words, and a few minutes of shadowing is the sheer psychological relief it provides.
Absolutely.
There's a profound relief in realizing that discipline is just so much more reliable than motivation. I mean, motivation is an emotion, right?
Yeah, it comes and goes.
It changes based on how well you slept or how much coffee you've had. You don't have to summon the motivation to study for 2 grueling hours. You just need the tiny bit of discipline required to do your 10 minutes.
Realizing you only need 5 specific sentences and 10 basic words a day to see massive linguistic progress is incredibly freeing.
It builds a formidable foundation. But of course, there is a final hurdle.
Yes. The real world.
The real world. Eventually, you have to leave the safety of your bedroom, leave your solitary morning routine, and speak to an actual person who might ask you a question you weren't prepared for.
And this is exactly where the anxiety spikes all over again.
Right. So the foundation is laid, but how do we make that leap into live interaction without the cognitive freeze just coming right back?
The source is very grounded about this reality. It states unequivocally, true confidence can only be forged in real-world interaction.
You can't just simulate it indefinitely in your bedroom.
No. First, you have to embrace a radical acceptance that you will make mistakes. It is a biological certainty.
Okay, embrace the mistakes.
But here is the psychological key that really unlocks the fear. People care much, much less about your grammar than you think they do.
Oh, it's the classic spotlight effect.
Exactly.
We walk around thinking everyone is analyzing our misplaced verb tenses or our slight mispronunciations. But in reality, the person you are talking to is just worrying about their own life or, what they're going to have for lunch.
They're focused on the message, not the medium. So to ease into this, the strategy is to start with extremely low-pressure conversation starters.
Right, you don't walk up to someone and try to debate the geopolitical landscape.
No, you say, hello, how are you? What are you doing today?
And crucially, you force yourself to speak slowly.
This is a huge point. The source points out a really fascinating mechanical truth.
Which is?
When you try to speak fast because you think speed equals fluency, your brain actually interprets that rushing as panic.
It triggers a stress response?
Exactly. But when you deliberately force yourself to speak slowly, your nervous system stays calm. Plus, remember that a conversation is a two-way street. Active listening is half of the interaction. You don't have to carry the entire burden of the talking.
Daniel's story from the source perfectly illustrates this terrifying transition.
Oh, Daniel. Yeah.
He practiced his solitary routine religiously. He sounded fantastic when he was alone in his room. But the very first time he had to interact with a real person, he completely froze. Someone simply asked him, "How are you?" And his mind went entirely blank.
That deer-in-the-headlights feeling is universally awful.
It really is. He felt incredibly defeated. But instead of retreating and quitting, he made this micro-commitment to himself. He promised that the next time someone asked him that, he would just say, "I am fine."
3 tiny words.
3 words, and he
Yeah.
executed it. That one small, successful sentence built a tiny bridge of neurological proof that he could survive the interaction,
And that tiny bridge of courage led to full, normal conversations just a few weeks later.
which ties into the final, often overlooked piece of the puzzle, positive affirmations.
It sounds a bit cliche to some people, but it works.
It's about actively replacing performance anxiety with authentic self-expression, telling yourself daily, I am learning, I am improving, I'm not afraid. Your internal dialogue literally shapes your external reality.
The source highlights Anna here, who was so terrified of speaking English, she would physically shake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She started by speaking just one single sentence out loud to someone, in a very low, hesitant voice. But through small, daily repetition of that one courageous act, backed by affirming her own progress, her fear eventually evaporated.
When we step back and look at Daniel and Anna, there's a really clear through line.
I think the most profound takeaway from all these stories is recognizing what actually changed first for them. What
Right.
changed first for Daniel and Anna was not their English vocabulary. It wasn't that they suddenly memorized a new grammar rule.
No.
What changed first was their courage.
Yeah.
The actionable steps we've unpacked today, the 10-minute routine, the shadowing, the 10 simple verbs, they are certainly language acquisition tools.
Mm.
But more importantly, they are a systematic method for dismantling the fear of interaction.
You're building courage first, and the fluency simply rides in on the back of that courage.
That completely flips the script.
Let's bring this all together for you, the listener. If you are struggling with language anxiety, trying to memorize your way out of it won't work.
It won't.
Overcoming it isn't about studying harder. It is entirely about starting smaller. It's about trading the exhausting burden of perfectionism for the quiet, unstoppable power of consistency.
You swap the draining habit of native language translation for direct, simple English thinking. You utilize writing to see your thoughts, and you read short stories out loud to physically train your vocal cords.
And you dedicate just 10 minutes a morning to those 5 simple sentences and 10 basic words. By doing this daily, you are literally building the neurological reflex necessary to step out into the real world and survive those low-pressure conversations.
In a complete paradigm shift from passive, fearful consumption to active, courageous doing.
Which brings us to the end of today's deep dive. But before we sign off, I want to hand it over to you for one final thought to leave our listener with.
All right, well, if your brain only learns that speaking a new language is safe by actually surviving the physical action of speaking, then every mistake you make isn't a failure. It is the exact neurological stepping stone required to map that language permanently in your mind. If silence is the only true failure, how will you choose to sound wonderfully, bravely imperfect today?
Get on the bike, scrape your knee, and let yourself wobble. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Keep learning, keep speaking, and we'll catch you next time.